It's Derek Prawl with IWCE. I have with me Harlin McEwen. Harlin has had perhaps one of the most illustrious careers in public safety and the wireless communication industry. So Harlan, would you mind giving us sort of a brief rundown of your career and your credentials?
You got a couple of hours? Well, I started out in law enforcement 1957. So that's 60 years, okay? And I really got interested because I was interested in radio communications. So from the very beginning, I got into law enforcement because of my interest in communications. In those days, communications were pretty crude and fairly rudimentary. I had a fire chief that lived next door to me that had a two-way radio in his vehicle, and I just loved that radio, and he used to let me go with him to alarms and things, and then I started hanging around the fire station, eventually became a dispatcher, and then that led me to becoming a police officer. So communications has been something in those days we used to buy a crystal monitor that would be tuned to a particular police or fire channel, and we could listen to the police calls and the fire calls. And those were, really quite a thing in those days, mm-hmm. because, we didn't have any tunable things or, that kind of thing. So that's how it started.
Sure.
And then, throughout my law enforcement career, I was, for a period of time, a volunteer firefighter, but my career was in law enforcement, and I worked my way up from, being a patrol officer to sergeant to lieutenant to eventually chief. I was chief in two different departments, one a small village department, and then eventually a medium-sized city department. So, and during all of that time, I got to be more aware of communications advancements, looking at the changes in communications, and we went from a great big heavy battery handheld telephone portable, which is all we had for portables, to a handheld portable during those early years, and since then many advancements. So over the years I engaged in all kinds of communications issues. Became the chairman of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police Communications Committee. That led me to being appointed as the chairman of the Communications Committee for the International Association of Chiefs of Police in 1978, and I continued in that role until 2015, 36 years. So, in that role, I was the leading subject matter expert for the Police Chiefs of America in communications issues.
Sure. So, over this time, you've obviously seen the industry grow, by leaps and bounds. Tremendous changes, over the course of the years, and you've been very active in some of these changes and responding to them. But what would you say that over the span of your career, what are you most proud of? What would you say is your greatest accomplishment?
Well, obviously, where we are right now with the anticipated signing of a FirstNet contract tomorrow, this is probably the crown jewel of all that I've done, but I have many others. I mean, I've lived through the transition from analog to digital communications, and all of those, now to broadband communications from traditional land mobile radio. So all of those things have been challenges and kind of fun, in a lot of ways. But I think probably this FirstNet thing, which has really been a 20-year investment on my part, is probably the crown jewel. I mean, it's going to have the most significant impact on public safety communications for many, many years to come that I have ever seen.
Yeah, I did want to ask you specifically about FirstNet, and it seems like this has been decades in the works, and
Sure.
something that we've been talking about
Right.
for a very long time, and something that you've been a part of for a very long time. What are you most excited about of this? Why is this so important that
Well,
FirstNet?
because today public safety officials use commercial services that are not reliable and they're not dependable when they need them. So they're excited about using broadband for data exchange and all kinds of things that you can't do with narrowband voice. And the shortcomings of the national commercial networks is that they're not always reliable. When a big event occurs and everybody wants to talk to their cousin, their wife, their husband about what's going on, the network gets overloaded and we can't get access to it. And doesn't have all the security features that we need. So this network will be a dedicated network with priority for public safety. There will be public commercial users on the network, but they will always be secondary as opposed to our being secondary in a sense on the commercial networks.
Sure. So, obviously this is very important, and this is something that is going to be important for a very long time to come.
Yes.
And kind of with that in mind, of this looking to the future, of public safety, and given your wealth of experience in this field, what advice do you have for a young person entering this field? Public safety or telecommunications. What wisdom would you share with them?
Well, it's a wonderful opportunity for young people to get into this realm because the technology is rapidly changing. I mean, just think about it. I think T.J. Kennedy in his keynote this morning was talking about, the iPhone just came out like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So in 10 years, I mean, everybody's got an iPhone or an Android device. You don't go any place when somebody doesn't have a phone, and they're using them for all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen in the next 10 years is almost beyond my imagination. It's gonna be a wonderful, exploding, changing environment for a young person to latch onto today and get into that arena. The biggest issue is that young people often they don't have a long-term commitment to something.
Sure.
I've spent, like I said, most of my career with a focus on communications.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that in police work, for instance, people, they start out as a police officer, they get promoted, then they're a supervisor, a sergeant or a lieutenant, and then eventually they work up maybe to become the chief. They're not focused on the extraneous things like communications. They're focused on the more mainstream kinds of things.
Sure.
I just had that extra focus. And so young people going into this, they don't necessarily have to be in public safety. They could be, and it would be a good place to be, but they also could be from outside and then learn about public safety and their needs and what's going on. So there's two or three different ways to approach it, but I would think for a young person, going to college and coming out looking for a career, going to work for one of these communications companies is a great place to be.
Sure. So, kind of looking back on the, again, like I said, long and illustrious career, just kind of for fun, what are you most looking forward to in retirement?
Well, it's hard to cut your ties. I mean, this is something that's been I've spent 7 days a week for many, many years engaged in communications related issues.
Sure.
people call me, you know, I mean, I've become fairly well known in the community. People have concerns, questions, and I've always never discouraged somebody from, I've always published my mobile number, and people call me all the time. So that's fun. I mean, it's fun if, I mean, I'm not always able to answer their question, but I can usually direct them to somebody that can. And, you know, I suspect some of that will continue. I mean, people are not going to forget to call me.
Sure.
But, you know, my wife and I have been talking about, you know, spending some time on traveling and doing some things. So I think probably it won't be totally gone, but, you know, I'm looking forward to some leisure time.
Sure. Well, Harlan, it was an honor talking to you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Glad to meet you.
Appreciate it.